Hi, welcome back to the Empowered with Immigrant Parents podcast. I am your host, your coach, Allison Lee. We are going to talk about 4 things that you can actually do right away to really move you towards, take steps towards the life that you want in relationships, in your career, or whatever it is that you're looking to do. I will share a recap at the end of the episode just so that you get the final 4 because this is a conversation between me and Dana Malstaff, the founder, visionary, CEO of BossMom, and so I wanted to just give you that recap at the end, so look out for that. Before I do share with you this episode though, I wanted to share how I actually found BossMom. This was actually in 2020, 2021 when I was looking to grow my family. And by grow, I mean like have children. So this was very monumental for me in the sense that like I saw this person give permission, support moms who wanted to pursue this career, an entrepreneurial career that is very different from the quote unquote norm. And she was giving me all types of permissions that I didn't know I really needed at that time. And being in the community really helped me. Like a year or 2 later, I joined her community, helped me be surrounded by like-minded people who were on the same track as me, had unique experiences and careers, but were doing the same type of things while being a mom. And that was really, really helpful because as I always think about and as I always say, it's so important to know your options. And by knowing your options, you can choose. You can choose if you want to pursue this or that and not be so limited, right? The goal is to just always feel empowered, right? Hence the name of my podcast, Empowered with Immigrant Parents. I want you to feel empowered to make any decision that you want, know your options, and not feel stuck. Because I think with adult with immigrant parents, the pattern typically is that we do feel stuck and limited in the ways that we can actually live our lives. But you can do things in small baby steps to help you take steps towards learning what your goals are or other ideas are, right? Without feeling so stuck and not feeling so unsafe, because I think safety is also really important. And especially if you want to grow your own business, for our parents and for ourselves, you may have been experiencing a lot of survival mode, right? If we're immigrating to a new country, we're definitely going to be in survival mode to some extent. So building up that safety net and having some sort of way that is moving you towards what you want, but in a way that doesn't feel so scary that you don't do it, is so, so important. And I talk about this here in this episode too with Dana. Like I said, there will be a recap at the end, and I so appreciate BossMom and Dana for all that she's done and all her team members. So if you are interested, check out her BossMom community. It would be so amazing to have the support if that's what you're needing. And I appreciate Dana so much. She is so brilliant in her work, and I would highly recommend her if you need any support. So without further ado, here's our episode.
Welcome to this episode of the Boss Mom podcast. Super excited to have you here. Now, my guest, we just had such a great conversation. So you are in for a treat because my guest is the founder of Unshaken Gens. She empowers second-generation adults to honorably care for their loved ones without sacrificing their own needs and dreams. Her Unshaken Confidence coaching program builds on her 6+ years as a licensed therapist and personal journey as a daughter of immigrant parents. Now, my guest is Allison Lee, and we had a really great conversation, and I got to be curious about parts of a culture that I've never experienced because I was born here in America and I've had multiple generations here in America. And oh my goodness, it was such an interesting conversation, eye-opening in a lot of ways. And Allison was not only just a gem in terms of answering all of my questions, but also just smart and what she's doing is really, really important. And I love seeing all of our boss moms out there fulfilling a need for really underserved audiences in a lot of different ways that just lights up my heart. So without further ado, let's go hang out with Allison. Allison, welcome to the Boss Mom podcast. I'm super pumped to have you.
Hi, Dana. Thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Yay. Okay. So I love what you do because you are one, I believe that there's the mental health crisis, and all of us are starting to recognize that the way we think, the way we experience things, the our upbringing, all of those things are just massively impacting our capabilities, our abilities, and potentially if impacting our not potentially, but impacting our children. And it becomes this, like, if we want to break cycles, I think it starts with the mind. That would be my I don't have any degree to say that that's correct, but that's what I believe. So I love that what we're gonna talk about today because it's there's so many of us that don't know, or so many of us that are your ideal person that absolutely understand like what it's like to be in certain situations, and you're gonna help us kind of peek behind the curtain of what it looks like. And I'm being vague for a reason. So tell everybody like what you do just so we can get into that kind of because it's such an interesting yeah, it's such an interesting path that you're leading everybody down, and I want to happen. So yeah, give everybody the in the lowdown.
Yeah, so my background is in mental health therapy, so I have a private practice, and I also am the founder of Unchicken Gens. And they're different in the sense that one's therapy and one's not. So the other is coaching. We're just giving information, workshops, tools. But I help adults with immigrant parents really try to find ways to have the relationships that they want without the self-sacrificing beliefs, without the self-doubt, the critical talk that we all have, by really being aware of our mindset, being aware of our thoughts, and making sure that our thoughts and our values are aligned with how we want to show up now so that we could live the life that we want without all the negativity or like really thinking about not being good enough, right? Which is really tough for adults with immigrant parents who are doing so much and trying to achieve so much.
Yeah. Just this tiny story of a friend that really started to hit home for me. Some of the things you were talking about. So I have a friend, and he's Korean, and his parents came over from Korea and like gave all these things to him. And it's so funny because he was like, Dana, I have to date Korean women. And I was like, okay, why do you have to date Korean women? And he goes, because my parents live with me and I own a home, and now they're getting older. I've come in and they live with me. And culturally, that's not only expected, but it's also, I want them. I want them near to me. We're very family oriented. And he goes, if I date a Korean woman, that is sexy. She loves it. If I date an American woman, she thinks I'm a loser because why are your parents living with you? And they assume they own the home and I'm just living in their basement. It's like, and he's like, so it's just this, it seems like it's a small thing, but it's actually a really big deal. And I was like, oh my gosh. So then I was like, well, tell me more about what this is like and what you feel is your obligation to your family. And where is the line crossed where it becomes obligation? You're excited to have an obligation that stresses you out. And it's like these really interesting conversations that open up from that where I'm like, oh my God, I've never experienced that. I have no idea what that is like. My mom wouldn't live with me if I asked her to. She'd be like, I hate the way you keep your house clean. It's not clean enough. I can never live with you. It's just so interesting. So with that like story in mind, tell everybody a little bit about what that experience is, like what you've seen with clients and maybe yourself, or those things of like what are some of those stories of what are those expectations, and are those expectations just from the parent side, or do we just assume expectations, like are immigrants coming over and making these big sacrifices and then pushing those sacrifices on their children, or are they just assumed? Like how does that dynamic work that really does cause an immense amount of stress for that adult who has a parent immigrant?
Yeah, so I have a framework that kind of explains it. And the first part of your story, the story that you shared, really explains the first part of my repay cycle. So it's that awareness, right, where family members do expect and impose upon the child, their young adult, or that becomes an adult, ideas of what they need, goals that they want to have for their kids because they think, in their eyes, this is what success is. And this is why we
Mm-hmm.
came over here. And I want you to have a successful life so that you could take care of yourself, you could take care of us. So these are the goals that we have in mind for you. And on the flip side, the person, the individual also has this innate desire to give back sometimes, right? Of course, maybe not
Mm-hmm.
all the time, but like for me, for example, I spoke English and Vietnamese. My parents spoke predominantly Vietnamese. So when I needed to help them translate, of course, I wanted to help them. I wanted them to get the right resources, the right
Mm-hmm.
support, buy the right things, pay the right price, right? Of course, like I don't want them to like get gypped or whatever it is. So I want to help them. And then part of that too is wanting to give back because I care about them as well. So it's a mixture of both. But sometimes, of course, one end can be more pressured than the other. And this is where the importance of like figuring out like what are our values, what values overlap with our family members,
Mm-hmm.
and what values are not really in alignment with us
Mm-hmm.
is important work to do so that we, even if we're like, oh, I don't want to give back to my parents because they expect so much of me, but actually, is that my value? And do I
Mm-hmm.
actually want to give back so that I can own it and not just try to kind of like
Yeah.
retaliate or do the opposite because our parents are expecting it of us?
Yeah. Well, one of the things I think we see, and this is something that really intrigues me, is things that are portrayed in movies, the things that we like, they'll make somebody like me go, "Oh, I totally understand that culture. I saw it in a movie once," as if I have any idea, right? And so one of those is that expectation, like, I came over here and I sacrificed everything. So you're going to be a doctor or you're going to be a lawyer because one of these is the things that like makes the most money and you need to be successful. So it's not even like giving the repay is like giving back to us financially or living with us or any of those things, but it's like you have to prove that my sacrifice was enough, right? Or like the cartoon Elemental, which I really liked, was like, I spent all this time opening the shop, you've got to take over the family business, and even if you don't want to. And yeah, and so some of those expectations of either one being like the really hard on your kids that they have to be successful, or the taking over the family business. And yeah, and I getting to know you, I've realized I assume I make a cultural assumption that is how every immigrant is. Like, which is a gross overestimate of like what it's actually like. And so it's really interesting. Yeah, like, is that something you see often? Is that a relatively correct cultural assumption? Like, how does that work? Because we start to recognize like, wow, we have big beliefs based off of movies or stories or things that most of us have no real experience to know whether they're true or not.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think, it's kind of what the parent or the family knows. If they know that doctors make a lot of money, that equates to safety, that equates
Mhm.
to food, just like comfort and everyone being taken care of. If all they know is like this shop has like kept our family alive, brought us money, like why wouldn't you keep the shop going,
Mhm.
right? So it's like this, our brain's trying to keep us safe, and what we know is what we know will keep us safe. So then
Yeah.
they want the kids and the family to carry that on or like follow these steps because they think that's the right path to like being safe still and having
Mhm.
success. And it may be because they want it for their image sometimes, but in a way too, it's also just like, again, if they don't know any better, quote unquote, and not better as in like more, but like if they don't know there are other alternatives to the end goal that they want for their loved ones, they're going to be down this tunnel vision and think that that's the
Mm.
only way because again, they don't have more information or access, right? Like being a content creator or being, I don't know, an artist. They're like, how do you make money? How do you survive and take care of
Yeah.
other people? That's not
Yeah.
something we are familiar with.
Yeah. I feel like in the next 20, 30 years, I mean, I hate to say it that's long, but I do think culturally changing the view of things like that, they're going to go, "Oh yeah, you're an influencer. Oh yeah, you're a content creator." Like, "Oh yeah, like those all of a sudden become high paying jobs." We're not quite there yet, but I feel like it's going to inevitably happen because
Yeah.
all of our kids want to be influencers, right? Or YouTubers, I feel like. Well, okay, so then let's switch over to the side for the actual person who has immigrant parents. We've had these conversations about, these mindset shifts about how they see it because there can be a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety. You see a lot of burnout right? Of that isn't good for them, and then that perpetuates to their kids, and then it just becomes these cycles. And like you said, you mentioned rebellion, things that present itself that end up hurting relationships they wish weren't hurt because they just feel stuck. And so, what are the mindset shifts that we need to be making, right? For those that are listening, one that are your ideal person that has immigrant parents, or also like me that have good friends who have immigrant parents, and just to understand that more. What are the ways that they're thinking now that we need to shift?
There's so many, but I think maybe the 2 that are top of mind is boundaries are really, really important, and I can go into it a little bit more, but then the second one is that, in order to have the relationships that we want, we have to do something different, right? Whatever we're doing now is equating to the relationships that we have where maybe we're not understood, we're not feeling like it's reciprocated, we're not feeling supported in the way that we want. So we do have to do things differently, and that's gonna be uncomfortable, but it's necessary. And when you do it in a supportive environment, that can be easier, but it is necessary so that we actually get the change that we want and
Mhm,
really start to challenge ourselves to like move away from what we think is going to happen, right? That fear and that worry of
mhm.
like being a bad daughter, being a bad person, being mean. And I think that's the main one where really like doing something different and shifting our mindsets is just so, so important. And it's also the hardest thing to do because, again, similar to what I talked about with like the jobs and the careers, like it's kept us safe. Like I've survived this long on this line of thought. So why am I
Yeah.
going to change it and risk everything? What if like I lose everyone versus like having this relationships that's not quite what I want?
Yeah. Well, so interesting. I've had conversations with people who are marriage coaches or counselors. One of the things that's similar to what you just said is there's a fear that if somebody, like, if their parents aren't on board with this, that then it's never going to work. It's going to ruin a relationship. And time again, no matter what kind of relationship you're talking about, every single expert I've talked to has said, like, you changing yourself and the way you think and the way you act and how you're showing up makes the difference, and it changes the relationship, and they change, right? There's
Mhm.
that coming along, and it's almost that set by example. So when we're talking about some of these shifts that showing up now, how are some ways that they can show up now, right, in those different ways? And do they have to shift the mindset completely, or is it like doing the action even when it feels uncomfortable, like setting the boundary or doing it different? Is that what like makes it become the mindset? I always have this thought of like, is it a catch 22? Is it I have to change the way I think in order to do differently, or do I start doing differently in order to change the way I think?
So I think for me, it's first recognizing what the thought is and identifying like kind of like with an iceberg, what's underneath, right? If I think, well, if I say no to my mom and helping her with her laptop today, what am I worried about, right? She's gonna think I hate her or don't wanna help her ever. Like I go to these extremes of the all or nothing. And then I
Mhm.
have to catch that thought to be like, well, is that true? Like if I just don't help her today because I'm busy, like does this mean that I don't care about her? So to me, it's really catching the thoughts first. And then we
Mhm.
could take these little baby steps to really test the waters, right? In a way that we're comfortable with. Because if we go too big, we might be too scared and
Mhm.
people might not react in the way that we think they would, and then we might be tracked. So for
Yeah.
me, it's always the thoughts first because they're really, really powerful. And we have so many thoughts running in our minds, like
Mhm.
in a minute, that if we don't pause and pay attention to it, we can really go down a rabbit hole of like fears that may never happen.
Yeah. Okay, so then you said boundaries in the way you're thinking. So say for instance, because in the boss mom space, we've got all of these women who want to be starting businesses, right? And there's a lot of women who, one, either they're stay-at-home moms, but they want more, right? And is that seen culturally as weird or not appropriate or something along those lines? The jobs that a lot of women want aren't necessarily noticed as highly lucrative jobs, or maybe they have doing an MLM thing, maybe they're doing a side hustle, maybe they have an Etsy shop, or they're starting a YouTube channel, or they're becoming a coach or something along those lines. Or in this instance of like maybe they did go out and they became a therapist or they became a doctor, and a ton of those women are going, those lives are really hard with kids. Like those careers are really hard with kids. I'm going to shift over to coaching and do this online. Or I want to change the world in a certain way without these regulations. So I'm going to go over here. So, in that instance of being a boss mom who has decided to do something different from a job, right? And their parents are looking and going, what the heck are you doing? right? And the stress from that, like, can we talk about how one, it like how would, if you were working with somebody, address that they want to live a certain life that their family doesn't understand? Like, what are some of those steps you talked about, like the boundaries and things that they start to take to show up now with that the way they should be thinking so that they can do the things they want in life while not feeling like they're letting down, the last generation that made really big sacrifices.
Yeah, that's a great question. So first, I would think about, are these my thoughts? Are these my fears? Or are these my parents' fears? And again, is there an overlap? And if there is an overlap, what can I do to really minimize the risk that I feel like I'm taking, quote unquote, right, of doing this so that I can show up really confidently, right? So maybe I do two businesses at once, or I do two jobs at one time.
Mhm.
I save and I don't go out for however long so that I could feel comfortable enough to take this risk and
Mhm.
know that everyone is taken care of, right? Especially as a mom, there's this obligation to take care of, family members. And even without being a mom, maybe as second gens, there is this obligation to take care of
Mhm.
family members. So we want to quiet that first and then really see like, well, why do I want to pursue this, right? Really going back to the why, the purpose, and what it will this bring for me potentially, because we don't know until we try. But just check in with like the end goal for us and know that this is really for us. And we've already taken care of the responsible stuff so that we can, safely proceed into this unknown and know that no matter what, we can always fall back on something or we're going to go all in because we've always been very resilient and successful anyway. So how can we're going to
Mhm.
make this work and how can we make this work?
I love that. Okay, what about the person that's maybe hasn't found you until it feels like the anxiety, the stress, the maybe the depression, the overwhelm are already really big. They feel insurmountable. Like, is there a turning point? Is there I mean, I guess I know the answer, which is no. I would think there's generally always the ability to turn things around. But I mean, I know you've dealt with people that are just their health has declined, their mental health has declined, like all of those things. What are like when it feels like it's so imminent? And there's a lot of friction. What are kind of some of the steps they can take to begin to move besides just talking to you, obviously?
Yeah. So yeah, I see that a lot in my therapy practice where my clients have sacrificed so much that they're like totally burnt out. They think that the only way to really sustain their relationship and do what they're doing in supporting their family members is to not see them anymore, to cut them off, when that
Mhm,
actually
mhm,
is really opposite of what their whole intention was of supporting them and giving to them and taking care of them, right? It's like completely
yeah.
opposite. So it's really recognizing that like taking care of ourselves and setting those boundaries, saying no when we need to is beneficial for the long run, right? If we have to imagine it like a marathon, we can't just keep sprinting in the marathon, otherwise we're going to
Mhm,
burn out. How do we take care of ourselves along the way, drink those waters and, jog so that we can really get to where we want to go? And I think the self-sacrificing piece is really hard for adults with immigrant parents because they feel a lot of responsibility since childhood to be the ones to translate, like we talked about, to be the
mhm,
ones to help and are expected to. So then they get into this rhythm of just doing it automatically. And yes, we can still help, but we can still have that pause to see when does it fit into my schedule? Is this urgent? Is this something that, someone else can help me with so that I could take a little bit of load off so that
mhm,
I can still be there for the long game. And I think
mhm.
that is really, really tough for a lot of my clients because yeah, this the weight of caretaking and sacrificing is really, really big on them.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and in other instances too of husbands and wives that get sick. Yeah, for anybody where you're caretaking, that can be an immense weight. One of the things that it made me think of when you were just talking that I'm curious about is, so for instance, I talk a lot about my stepdad because he was in business, And then I remember years ago, my mom was like, hey there, what about me? Did I not do anything that made you successful? Like, am I not special? And it made me think when the Elemental movie where like the dad was leaving to create a better life and he kneels down in respect to his dad who
Mhm.
was like, no, I do not approve of what you're doing. And at the end his daughter does it and it shows it's like it was a symbol of this respect that like I respect what you have given me, like, and you respect that I must now go and create my own life, which is hard for any parent. So one of those things that I have learned from my family experience is to remind my parents of the things that they gave me that made me who I am in a good way, right? Because they all know the things that, you know, like that screwed us up. Oh yeah, my mom will be like, "Yeah, that thing that you got, sorry, that was that was me." But it's like I forget that they want to feel like they had some part in your success. So I can totally get that if I am doing this entrepreneurship thing and my kids grow up and they want to be doctors or go into corporate America, I'm going to be heartbroken. I'm gonna be like, "Didn't I show you that this is a way better life?" And then I'm gonna have to like really imagine that like they're not me. Like, and they for some reason want this thing. But in my mind, I'm like, oh yeah, I've got a whole vision for exactly how my children are going to turn out. And it's a very interesting dynamic. And so do you find that respect is that thing of like showing respect from the child, showing respect from the parent, and some of those things that dynamic when you're talking about mindset shifts and boundaries of like how to preserve that respect, and is then there's some of that like how those boundaries interaction happen to keep that? I don't know, does that even make sense?
Yeah, and as you're saying that, I'm thinking of how actually a young person who has been parentified, right? Meaning they had to take on the roles of being a parent or being the one that makes decisions or talks to authority figures. The roles get a little bit reversed in families with immigrant parents, right? Where the parents are the ones that are wanting respect and talking and telling the kids what to do, but yet on the flip side, the kids are also telling them what to do because they know they're
Mhm.
more acculturated, they're more proficient in English, and so then the
Yeah.
dynamic gets really shift, and sometimes they get either put at the same playing field or even the child gets a little bit higher up than the parents
Oh,
in terms of
interesting.
hierarchy because of what they have to help them with. And then when the parents want to parent, then they get upset when the kids don't listen because they're used to being up here. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh, I hadn't
Oh.
even thought about that, but you're absolutely right. Like because I've known talking to parenting coaches that idea of when the child usually it's perceived in some space where it's like a single mom who has to work two jobs or something, and so the child has to become a responsible adult, or if you're dealing with a parent with addiction or things like that, they have to become. But you're absolutely right, in the instance of a language barrier, you become the moderator, in which case you're going to have to deal with situations that maybe you wouldn't have even been aware were happening, because
Mhm.
that's so interesting. Yeah, so then that changes the respect dynamic, because I've always had that like from the movies you watch or the things like that, anybody from like an Asian culture is very stern, very high expectations, like very well behaved, like all of those things. So my assumption, 100% assumption, is that they are very strict parents. And do you see that presents itself, you, because I know you have that belief of a lot of things that happen in childhood that end up presenting later. Do you think that weird respect dynamic goes into adulthood and is part of what you teach people, is how to like recreate the right dynamic?
Mhm, because, like, even for me, right, I think when I wanna caretake for my parents, I forget that they're agency sometimes because so used to, like, doing things for them. I'm used to making decisions for them, with them. So when I let them kind of, like it's kinda like the reverse of the parent, right? The child's, like, letting go of the parents, and
Yeah.
they're feeling anxious, like, "Oh, will they make the right decision? Will they get the appointment that they wanted from their doctor without me there?" They have this anxiety. And that's why
Oh.
the self-sacrifice is so high because they feel like if I don't help them, it won't be correct or it won't be done correctly or, it just won't be right. So then they have this fear and then that's why they go all in. And then the decision fatigue kind of kicks in and then they burn out. And then the doing so much kicks in and they burn out there too.
Mhm.
So yeah, it really makes it difficult to let go and just kind of trust with so we have to like be very mindful of our thoughts and like our parents know what
Mhm.
to do or here are other ways I could support them without having to show up all the time.
Right. Oh, I love that. Okay, so what's the outcome, right? Like what's the ideal scenario? So you have somebody that's listening and they're
Mm.
like, "Allison, you have spoken to my soul. This is exactly what I'm going through." And they're going and they're thinking like it's a big gap between where, like I'm right here and where I could go. What's that end result? What can relationships look like? What can like that vibrancy that you want to create for people look like, so that everybody can start like feeling like they can envision the future? Um yeah, where they get to do the things they want but also have these great relationships.
Yeah, what I see for my clients is really having this confidence of knowing like they are doing what they can, and that is enough, right? And we can't really control what other people say and do. So whether or not we speak up to people about what we're doing or not doing, or we share our boundary, our actions are going to be so much more important in how we take care of ourselves, even if no one else knows, so that they could actually, have a conversation with their parents without like freaking out and then like avoiding them or not answering their calls, and having that confidence to be like, well, I care about you and I can't do this, right? Like it's so they don't fall into this all or nothing. So just having this relationship where we're not avoiding people, we're not angry all the time, we're not burnt out and not showing up as the best person that we know we can be, because we're feeling so consumed by worry, guilt, and fear. And I want all of that, as
Yeah.
minimized as possible for
Yeah.
all of my clients and all of second generation adults, because it is a lot of responsibility that they've had since young. And there's a way to live their life and do the things that they want to do while still taking care of their parents and giving back to them in their own way.
Yeah. Well, yeah, and I would like to think that ultimately what we want is we want our kids to be happy. Like parents probably don't
Yeah.
want to be the reason you have anxiety or stress or burnout, Like that's probably not I would assume in most cases it's not the intention. Like of course they have expectations of what they hope you'll do or what success looks like, but ultimately, yeah, like for us to feel happy and be in relationships that we want. I would think that's what we want, right?
Yeah, and they want the same with us, right? Our parents want good relationships with us, but they just don't know how, right? If you think about too, when people immigrate, if it's for poverty and other reasons or war, like they're in so much trauma, they're in so much like survival mode too, that sometimes they're not able to be in that. So when we're able to confidently recognize that in other people
Mm.
and feel compassion for it and know that, it sucks, we can grieve about it, but also know it's not super personal in the sense that they're not doing it on purpose, like then how can we show up and, be there for them and have the relationships and the interactions that we want, that's more aligned with what we want at least
Mhm.
than what we currently have.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I grew up obviously without money according to American standards, right? Of being pretty poor. And yeah, like I shared a room with my brother who was like in 17 and I was what, like 6 years younger. We had bunk beds. It was like, so we didn't, we did not have a ton. Like according, yeah, I say according to American standards because I've traveled around the world and we have abundance in so many ways. But I do with my kids now, like even though we have money, like, I wanna make sure my kids they'll never have some of the experiences I had. Like, they'll never know that, like, you really couldn't afford anything but ramen noodles for that day.
Mhm.
Like, they will just won't they won't know some of those things. So I was like, how do I make sure they don't turn out to be jerk faces
Oh my gosh. I think the same
who
thing all the time.
really.
Like, how do I make you resilient and humble and, not take anything for granted?
Yeah, well, also give it like my kids are 9 and 11 and everybody's like, "Well, why don't you just get a place where they can have their own room?" I was like, "They have to earn that." Like that I doesn't matter that I could afford for them to have their own rooms.
Mhm.
Like, no, you don't just get your own room. Like when I was growing up, you didn't get your own room if you wanted your own room. So, yeah, it's like it's so interesting. I can't even fathom that idea of like coming from I've have friends, past clients, things have come from, all over the world where like I had, a past friend that she's like, "Oh yeah, she speaks 5 languages, has gotten like 6 degrees and all these things." And she's like, "Oh yeah, I grew up and we had an outhouse. There was no bathroom in the house. You had to go out, like out in the farm, and then war broke out and all these things." And I'm like, "Oh my gosh, like how did you seem like you you're a normal person that just is dealing with things." Like
Wow.
how did you grow up through that? Yeah, so there's like I do want everybody to recognize how big the world is. And
Mhm.
I love that you brought that up because I do think there's a lot of our parents, even just in America, the cultural shifts. I saw the meme that was like, we will be the last generation that knows what life was like before the internet, like
Oh
before
gosh.
video games, like before social media.
Mhm.
Like after that, nobody our kids will have no and the next generation will have never experienced a pre-social media internet
Oh,
life.
that's kinda sad.
I know, right?
Wow.
Yeah, it's very interesting. Okay, so for I can go off on a tangent on this. So for everybody like that's watching, What's any final points on like getting started or, just something to think about as they move forward?
I think just really knowing that you're doing the best you can, right? Like with all that you've grown up with, had to deal with, have accomplished, you're really doing the best that you can. And, you know, with extra support, right? However that looks like podcasts, books, courses, therapy will help, right? We don't have to do it alone. I think there's always been this idea that, again, adults with immigrant parents have to do everything alone because of the trust factor, language, and expectations, but we don't have to do it alone. We don't have to suffer for as long as we have been already. And, we can have shortcuts to things, people can help us. And I think that, like, just trusting that once you find a space that you feel comfortable in, you can be supported and you can make more strides in your relationship than you ever thought possible. Because I really never thought I could have the type of relationship I have with my mom today. And now that I have a kid, it's also like, wow, I have to set even more boundaries in different ways, right? So life happens, and support and not doing it alone is always my encouragement for adults with immigrant parents.
Oh, I love that. I love it. And you're right. Those that are listening, if you have immigrant parents, like you're not alone. Like, and I love, Alison, that you've started this space and the support and everything that you're doing because that's something that you need to be able to have a community like that understands in the very unique ways that we're all different. We need to find the groups that get it, like get it at the level that we need it to understand it, so that we can feel really open and trusting to share our stories and share our experiences without feeling judged for them. So I
Yeah.
absolutely love that. Where can everybody find you?
Yeah, you can find me at heyallisonlee.com, and that's Allison with two L's and I. And then the last name is Ly. And yeah,
Yes,
I
I
have
love it.
resources there for them.
Yes, and we'll have, all those links in the show notes. I know we've had this conversation before. I always wanna call you Allison Lam. I'm like, "It's Lee. It's Lee. It's Lee. It's Lee," but it's spelled Ly. So
Mhm.
everybody can remember. We'll have all that in the show notes. Yes, thank you for coming on. I love this conversation, and I know we'll be seeing more of you, so thanks for coming on the show.
Thank you, Dana. I hope you enjoyed the episode. Here's a quick recap of what was talked about and the 4 steps that I really want to re-highlight with you, right? So obviously we talked about the repay cycle, this framework that I absolutely think explains the cycle of what adults with immigrant parents go through and how to really break free from those cycles and patterns by being aware, right? And what you can do as a recap is to really be intentional and set boundaries. And when we set boundaries, they can be very small. It can be just, hey, I need to take a break for 5 minutes. You're just not going to say anything, right? You can do so many things that are boundary setting that is not the stereotypical, I'm never going to talk to you again, or I need to like be alone for, for like the whole day, right? And sometimes we don't get that opportunity anyway. So set boundaries, and you can really sit with the discomfort of being in a space of doing something new. So that's the first thing. The mindset shift is really, really important. Number 2 is to catch your thought. If I say no, my mom will think that I hate her or don't like her, but we want to catch your thought and then really check in with yourself. Is that true? Is that true all of the time? Probably not. So then take another small step and not fall into this, what we call all or nothing thinking. Number 3 is to really think about how to create a safety net for yourself, right? If you're trying to do something new, like starting a business, and you want safety, and with being an adult with immigrant parents, security and safety is so, so important. So if that is important to you and you need that in order to move forward into a new career, a new job, a new trajectory that is very different from where you are now, let's build that safety net. Build that safety net so that you can feel comfortable knowing you either have a savings account or you have like an alternative path, you have support in these ways so that you can proceed safely. Because like I said, being an adult with immigrant parents, safety is so important because so much of our childhood, so much of our parents' life may have been in survival mode. So we want to make sure that we are taking care of that practical need and that logistic, right? So that is super important. And the last thing that you can do from this podcast episode is really have community, whether it's Boss Mom or if you want to join my community for adults with immigrant parents, or find some community, local, in person, whatever it is that you really can benefit from just not feeling alone and having people who are going through the same stages as you, the same things as you, but in their own unique ways. That can be really beneficial, to just hear people have their wins, hear people share about their challenges, see how people are using tools that are maybe differently from you, or just being around like-minded people, because it is so important that when we are doing something new, especially if we're around people who are discouraging us or not understanding us, it can be really easy to fall back and feel like we shouldn't be doing this new thing. And then that will really detract from what we're trying to do, right? When I was starting to build this business and even my private practice as a mental health therapist, 2 separate businesses, I really had to surround myself with people who were trying to do the same thing, so that I felt like, 1, it was possible. 2, it is something I am feeling supported in doing with people who've been there, right? I can't really help someone ride a bicycle if I don't know how to ride a bicycle. So it's hard to understand the mechanics and the feeling of the fear and all of that, without having that experience. And I know riding a bicycle is so simple. It's not apples to apples comparison, but just to give you a visual, right? It's really hard to be around people who may not understand us, and we're doing something that's already scary. So it can be beneficial to join a community and have that. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I will catch you next time. Hey, if you found this episode or any other episodes helpful, insightful, relatable so far, get on my email list as well. This is where you would get actionable tips, relatable tools, and it's just a space where you can feel connected and have the support and tools that may be beneficial for you as you're embracing how to unlock your fullest potential as an adult with immigrant parents. So go to heyallisonlee.com/email to get on the email list, and I will talk to you there. The link will be in the show notes as well.